Obviously, many of you will have listened to our conversation just now, myself and Peter Hitchens, about his exchange with Matthew Perry, who very tragically died at the age of just 54 this weekend. Famously, of course, he played Chandler Bing on Friends for 10 years. Tributes have been pouring in from friends and colleagues as the cause of his death is still being determined. The belief is that he may have drowned in his own hot tub, but it's front page news on all the papers this morning. Lots of pictures to be had. Friends to the end is the front page of The Sun. Matthew Perry dead at 54. Thought to be, from all to all intents and purposes, one of the greatest and most warm people in Hollywood, which is not known for real people and people who actually are genuine, but he obviously seems to be one of them. I'm joined now by entertainment journalist Kinsey Schofield to get the latest from California. Kinsey, very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. Very sad story, this, but I mean, sort of heartwarming in some ways to hear all the stories about Matthew Perry and how really decent a guy he was.
That's right. You know, Ione Skye, who's famous for the movie Say Anything, releasing some text messages she received from him. I believe it was October 15th, where he says he was just meditating and thinking about how beautiful she was. Also, Alyssa Milano, Robin Lively, these two actresses that worked with him, Robin dated him, both sharing stories about how he took them to play bingo at an old church in the valley where they were surrounded by old ladies, and how funny and cute it was that that's what he liked to do with his time. So you're right. And anybody that I've talked to that's worked with him said that he's a very kind man. He was absolutely, there was no diva behavior. He was a good person, a good man. And he talked about praying for fame, praying that he could become famous and do this as a job. And then in the midst of the chaos of addiction, praying to live and changing his priorities. So I do think at the end of the day, he was a very good human.
Yes, and I mean, as you say, nobody has anything but very, very good words to say about him. And also, he was, unlike the rest of the Friends cast, sitting in with the writers when they were writing the stuff, because he also was a bit of a comic genius, not least in the way that he delivered the lines, but just in the way that he came up with some of them.
To the point where they would run a scene, it wouldn't work, and the writers would rally around him and say, how do we fix this? I mean, with seconds to go before they reset and shot the exact same scene, he would come up with something, a one-liner or just, you know, a Chandlerism, and the crowd would erupt. So he was such a skilled comedian and talent. And I think we focus on that. We focus on Friends. We focus on how he made us feel in that role. But the reality is, we're finding out today with Hank Azaria and some of these other individuals that behind the scenes, he was really working to save people's lives and save people from addiction and help them with their recovery, which I know he would want to be his legacy. And it's fascinating to hear some of these stories about how passionate he was to save other people.
Yeah, and I've just retweeted a picture that I found on your Twitter. I'm still calling it Twitter. I don't know why anybody else wouldn't. But it's a picture of what looks like the Duchess of York, along with him and Joey standing in front of the Houses of Parliament. Was that when they came over to film the wedding in London?
An amazing episode where, you know, Joey is just desperate to have a run-in with a royal.
Right.
Chandler doesn't think it's going to happen, and so Joey gets a camcorder, has his camcorder, thankfully, when he runs into the Duchess of York, and they make a personal video for Chandler, who can't believe it. It's an amazing episode.
Right, and I mean, there was always a great connection, wasn't there, between this country and the US when it came to Friends. It's one of those shows, I suppose, that might be specific to an age range, but I mean, it's not that specific, because I mean, everybody knows about it. Most people, I haven't really heard many people have a bad word to say about Friends.
Well, I don't know who copied who, but wasn't it very similar to Coupling? Obviously, there was some inspiration there. I don't know who did it first, but I remember stumbling upon Coupling in Los Angeles, and it was just happening over in your neck of the woods, and thinking, wow, this looks a lot like Friends. So obviously that humor does translate, and you can turn on the television in any hotel room anywhere in the world, and Friends has been translated and is airing somewhere because there is a wholesomeness
Right.
about that humor. There
Yeah.
is a sincerity and a sweetness about that show that I just don't think you can find on television anymore.
Well, listen, I said the same to Jeremy Kyle this morning because we were talking about it, and I said it's one of those shows that, you know, if you're kind of just flicking around and you don't know what to do for half an hour or 45 minutes or so, you could put any episode of Friends on and even just have it on in the background, and it's just funny, you know?
It is. It's sweet. It's cute. You get invested in these characters because they're very likable. And one thing that Robin Lively said, who, is Blake Lively's sister, worked with Perry and dated him, was that Matthew Perry was Chandler Bing and Chandler Bing was Matthew Perry. So if you fell in love with that character watching him, it's hard to imagine that this is an individual that never got married and ultimately died alone, because so many women watched that show and just were enamored with him, in love with him. He was funny, he was quick, his sarcasm was just brilliant, and on top of it all, he was a very handsome man.
Yeah. And isn't it interesting as well that of all the shows that other people have done over the course of history, this is one show where nobody really did much else. I mean, I know they've all had their little projects. Jennifer Aniston's been in quite a few movies. Lisa Kudrow's done stuff as well. Monica, too. I mean, you sort of interchange the names, don't you? It doesn't really matter whether it's their cast name or their real name. But it's quite surprising in a way, isn't it, that none of them really went on to do anything bigger than Friends?
I think that's right. Ultimately, all of their legacies will be the sitcom. Matthew, to me, I felt like he was the breakout male because we did see him do some movies that were incredible and some other TV shows. I love the movie 17 again that he's in with Zac Efron. He's also in Fool's Russian, which is precious. Jennifer Aniston's had an amazing career, but at the end of the day, I don't think of Jennifer Aniston The Morning Show or Jennifer
Yeah.
Aniston Horrible Bosses. I think of Jennifer Aniston Friends. So that's a very good point.
Yeah, interesting. And as far as the actual investigation into the cause of death is concerned, I mean, they're still not absolutely sure. They are sure there was no kind of illegal drug use or anything like that. But, I mean, obviously his health was not great, was it?
Correct. He'd had approximately 14 surgeries over the course of several years, and that is to heal the damage that had been done to his body due to these addictions. He'd played pickleball for about 2 hours that day. However, his pickleball partner had told Billy Bush here in the States that he'd been fatigued, and he'd been fatigued for about a week. No illegal drugs were found on the scene, but some prescription drugs for, anti-anxiety, anti-depression, those were found within the household. The autopsy is done. There's no cause of death as of yet. They've sent off the toxicology reports, and typically those take weeks to months to get back. But, Lisa Kudrow's been telling the Daily Mail that the Friends don't believe that it's drug related, illegal drug related, that they hope it wasn't an accident, a medication, that was negatively affected by the warm water of the jacuzzi, and that he was in a really good place towards the end of his life. So they're disappointed by this.
Yeah, it really is a terrible, terrible shame. And always a surprise when somebody dies at such a young age as well.
I just, Variety, there was a line in Variety, the industry publication here, about all of us waiting for his second act. And there was so much success with his book. He was very proud of his book that came out a year ago now. So I do think we were waiting to see what was going to happen next because the opportunities were endless for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Kinsey, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Kinsey Schofield there.